Hey everyone, this is Dr. Cam, and you are joining Maximus Live episode 73 here on Thursday, July 14th, 2022. And shout out to everyone who's joining us on Instagram. Looks like we got a couple people joining our Instagram Live. We also have a Twitter Spaces going, YouTube Live, and hopefully some folks joining us later on Zoom as well to have live health coaching discussion. So every week we like to start out with a weekly unpopular opinion, and then get into Q&A. So if you have questions, you can feel free to type them on Instagram or YouTube Live. And for the folks who are calling in, I'll obviously chat with them live. So this week's unpopular opinion is that it is a myth that there are folks out there who can eat whatever they want and not gain weight. So I'm sure you've probably heard or met people even in your life that claim they can eat whatever they want and be able to get away with it. Maybe they're young, they're skinny, it's kind of been a long-standing urban myth. But I think it's an interesting one to dispel because there was a great study that was actually recently published in the journal Cell Metabolism that actually tried to investigate this. And it was actually really, really fascinating results. So what they did is they actually recruited 150 people who were essentially underweight, meaning they had a BMI below 18 and a half, and then compared them to 173 people who were normal weight, defined as a BMI between 21 and a half and 25. Screened out anyone that had any complicating medical conditions, eating disorders, etc. And they looked at, okay, well, what are the differences between these folks who are basically underweight versus normal weight? And here's an interesting thing that they found. They actually found it's not because they're more physically active or they're doing more exercise in order to burn more calories. In fact, it was the opposite. They were looking at accelerometer data, so they're basically tracking their movement with physical activity trackers, and they found that these folks were actually 23% less active than folks, even though they weighed less. And this was true in both guys and girls, and they were less active basically all throughout the day. So they were not skinnier because they were doing more physical activity. In fact, they were lazier, if you will, in that they were doing activity. Second, they were looking at their caloric intake. They're like, okay, well, what's going on with these folks? And they're using the gold standard in scientific research, which is something called doubly labeled water. And so they're objectively measuring their caloric intake. So this is much more reliable than just self-tracking on like a MyFitnessPal, which is notoriously inaccurate. So they looked at these folks, and the other surprising thing was that they basically ate 12% less calories than normal people. So even though the popular notion or myth is that, you know, skinny people can eat whatever they want, the real reality of it is they just probably want to eat less, and that's why they're skinny. So it may seem like they're eating whatever they want, but whatever they want is still total calories are lower than what normal weight people eat. So apparently there's some sort of self-regulation. Now maybe it may not be conscious or controlled, but look, the reality is still calories matter, and the reason they're skinnier is quite frankly that they eat less. Now here's the really interesting twist. They are different in a unique way, which they were measuring their resting metabolic rate, and their resting metabolic rate was higher. So these people are essentially burning more calories, not through exercise, but they're just burning more calories sitting there, right? The natural metabolic burn that we have just from, you know, our bodily functions is higher in those folks. And they particularly were looking at blood markers, and they found that they had basically elevated levels of circulating thyroid hormones, particularly T3, T4, and free T4. So it may be that these folks are a little bit genetically different in the sense that they may have basically unique thyroid function. It may be genetic, and that thyroid function basically amps up their metabolism so that they're burning more calories. So it's not that they can get away with eating whatever they want. It just may be that those folks are just wired so that they're burning more calories at rest, and as a result of that, they may actually do less physical activity, because if you're kind of burning your calories just by sitting there, then I guess you don't need to go on as many walks, or you feel maybe subconsciously less compelled to go on walks. This is an interesting, by the way, theory that some people just like naturally burn more calories to suit their diet. Like if you're eating, let's say, a few hundred more calories one day, you may literally like move your leg, jitters, get up, walk more in order to basically compensate and burn those calories. You're not doing it consciously or actively, but your body kind of knows what it needs. So it's like trying to balance out the caloric intake and expenditure so that it balances out and you don't gain weight. Now, obviously, in overweight people, this function is disrupted and they're obviously eating in excess so that they're putting on body fat. But if in these folks that are basically super thin, they just naturally burn more calories and don't need to essentially do as much physical activities. They also looked at other blood markers. Interestingly, despite being less active, they had lower triglycerides, higher HDL, lower LDL, basically suggesting that being lean, not having a lot of body fat, is more important for your biomarkers of health than being super physically active. Either that or maybe just consuming less calories in conjunction with the leanness really helped their lipid profile be healthy. So really, really interesting study to kind of dispel this whole notion that there's folks who could just eat whatever they want and get away with it. It seems like these folks are just unique in some way, in that they're actually eating less food, they're less physically active, but they're burning more calories just sort of sitting there. So I think the moral of the story that applies to everyone is you can't get away with eating whatever you want. In the end, you got to burn it one way or another. You got to either eat less like these folks do, burn more calories because you naturally have a higher metabolism, or if you don't naturally have a higher metabolism, you obviously need to do more physical activity to counterbalance it. So there's probably no way of sort of defying physics, as it were. And I don't think you can just eat whatever you want and try to burn it off with excessive exercise, I would say. So you got to watch what you eat. And the easiest way, I think, in my opinion, to watch what you eat is not to necessarily try to cut calories, but to improve the quality of the food that you eat, because when you're eating high quality foods that are nutrient dense versus calorically dense, you'll naturally eat less calories. So really interesting study. I'm really glad that there's good randomized, well, this wasn't a randomized study, but it was a good comparative study, and there was good measures that were used. So I think it's relatively good science methodologically, and it was kind of an interesting insight in terms of basically why some people are naturally skinny. And it kind of was had some surprising findings that I thought were worth sharing. All right, so we're going to take a couple questions. Someone asked, what is the best supplement that a male age 43 should be taking to support testosterone or boost it? The answer to that question there is no supplement that will boost your testosterone. We've talked about sort of the supplement myth as well. There's in fact a great paper on it. You can look it up, called Testosterone Imposters. And basically what the paper was doing was analyzing these T-boosting supplements that are prominently sold on Amazon, or these landing pages that claim they naturally increase testosterone levels. And the conclusion of the paper basically was, in fact, more of these supplements have no effect than producing any sort of result, and oftentimes don't really do anything. So basically the conclusion of the paper was, like, even though you can easily buy these supplements online, there's no definitive finding of efficacy. So supplements really don't work. They're snake oil for the most part. Unless you have an underlying nutritional deficiency that's impairing your production, then it can potentially, it's not really boosting testosterone. What it's doing is restoring your basically deficiency to where you would have or should have been if you were otherwise eating a relatively healthy and balanced diet. So that's why we do produce a supplement. You can look at it here. It's called MAximus Building Blocks. We don't sell it as a testosterone boosting supplement because I think that's not a fair and accurate claim. We really kind of sell this as a male multivitamin, and what it includes are very high dosages of things like vitamin D and vitamin K2, which, if you're deficient in it, may impair testosterone production. But if your levels are normal, it's not going to take you above average per se. And so that's why the studies on vitamin D and testosterone are very mixed. You see some studies that show a boost, some studies that do not show a boost. and it's probably, we don't know conclusively, a function of probably underlying deficiency. Now, a lot of people, I would say, are deficient. We found that about 2/3 of people in LA were deficient in vitamin D in terms of adult males, and 100% were suboptimal if they were not supplementing. So we do include it just to make sure that you don't have a vitamin D deficiency that's impairing your production, but it's not going to make a huge difference in terms of your testosterone. This is really just for overall health and making sure that you don't have any, like I said, underlying nutritional deficiencies. The best way of increasing your testosterone, of course, is taking a prescription medication, which we provide as part of the Maximus Protocol. We've talked about at length. You can check that out at maximustribe.com. So we use SERMs, selective estrogen receptor modulators. Long story short, they block estrogen and stimulate your body to produce more of its own natural testosterone. They provide a much more clinically meaningful effect in terms of it'll increase your levels by at least 50% usually, and provide a meaningful impact in terms of your mood, your energy, your drive, your focus, your confidence, your ability to put on lean mass, strength gains, and athletic performance. So there's studies, in fact, that show statistically significant improvements in all of those markers. So I'm looking to sign up for Maximus. Do you see any issues foresee any issues getting enclomiphene in the future? I am not a psychic mind reader, nor can I predict what's going to happen in the future. But I can tell you that we are continuing to prescribe enclomiphene as we have in the past without any issue. If and when regulatory changes happen, we will obviously follow FDA guidelines and make sure that we find suitable alternative treatments that ensure continuity of care for our patients and our providers. Now, the good thing is there's a whole class or family of medications of SERMs besides enclomiphene that provide this testosterone boosting effect. In fact, I was actually talking about 2 of them on our Discord channel for reasons other than testosterone. Now, we do not market or make any claims or prescribe these for other reasons, but there is interesting, promising, and very preliminary research that SERMs as a class or a category of drugs, including the parent drug clomiphene and tamoxifen, have actually very potent antiviral properties. Now, we've known this because the Ebola virus has been around for a while, and we found that they found that it inhibits actually Ebola and other viruses, and in fact, there's good emerging research that suggests that it actually may protect against COVID, which is obviously going around by preventing viral entry. So I think it's actually very, like I said, it's too early to make any determination or claims, but just given how endemic these new Omicron strains, particularly BA.5, that's going around right now, is particularly virulent. They may be around for a while. So I think it'll be very interesting to see if these are continuing to be used and potentially used as not just testosterone boosters, but potentially as sort of immunoprotectants. Now, like I said, I don't make any claims, and we're not going to prescribe it for that reason. But I think the reason I share that is it just goes to show that the mechanism of action is really important, and drugs that are in the same class or same class of compounds can produce similar effects. So whatever happens with enclomiphene, there will be other drugs that can work in a similar mechanism and produce similar results. All right. See if there's anyone who's joined our Zoom. It looks like it. All right, so why don't we bring in some folks who are on the Zoom. Hey there. This person's joining. I think someone asked, is there anything to give me more stamina? Good question. What are you referring to in terms of stamina? Are you talking about just energy to go throughout the day? If that's the case, then I think the King Protocol that we offer at Maximus is really good for that. In fact, I would say the number one benefit of having normal to high testosterone is a restoration of normal energy levels, and it's not a caffeinated, stimulated energy like you get with obviously coffee or prescription amphetamines. It's just energy, as you're talking about. So that's really a huge benefit that people get. And like I said, it's a natural chemistry. I actually can't take any stimulants. I don't drink any tea or coffee. It makes me really wired, anxious, jittery. It messes up my sleep. I'm just a slow metabolizer of it. It's like in my 23andMe DNA report. I was like, I don't need a DNA report. I know I get jittery when I have it. But with this stuff, when your testosterone is just optimal, your energy is good to go all throughout the day. The way I describe it is you don't want to take that afternoon nap anymore, like you typically want to do when you're low energy. So it's not a panacea. So if you're sleeping like shit and you're not, there's no magic pill that's going to fix 4 hours of sleep a night. You got to fix your sleep. But that's why I think the King Protocol is great. We do provide you with a pharmaceutical agent that stimulates your testosterone. Testosterone stimulates natural energy. And if you do have some sleep problems or stress problems that are also causing issues with your energy, those two are the big killers, obviously, of energy, is stress and sleep. Then we'll help fix those too. We have a health coaching channel. You can check it out at maximustribe.com/discord. And I'm actually an expert in sleep and stress management, given my background as a licensed clinical psychologist. So happy to help you fix those things too. And that way, the combination of the pharmaceutical medication and the health coaching is really, really effective. It's a 1-2 punch. So you can sign up, maximustribe.com, and check it out there.
We had a couple questions via YouTube. Hey, Clayton here. I agree with you about eating whatever you want. I was able to do that until I turned 40. I'm on the King Protocol right now, just started. How long do you think it should take for my estradiol to go down, and what about DHT levels?
So this is a question about someone who's on the King Protocol. So whenever you increase testosterone, you're going to increase estradiol. They kind of just go hand in hand, right? Because literally testosterone is broken down by an enzyme, aromatase, into estradiol, right? So the analogy that like Dr. Shippen, one of our advisors, makes, it's like if the old biblical story of Adam and Eve, in which Eve is derived from Adam's rib. It's the same thing with estrogen. Estrogen is derived from testosterone. So when you increase your testosterone, you increase your estrogen. So it's not a bad thing. What we're really looking at is the ratio between testosterone and estradiol, what's called the T to E2 ratio. As long as those are maintained and you're feeling good, which is the other kind of just subjective thing. Guys feel different on different, feel optimal on different levels of hormones based on sort of their genetic set point and what they're accustomed to. So we're not necessarily looking for estradiol to go down, to your question. It's just making sure that you're at a level in which you feel comfortable and that you're functioning well, your libido is good. That's the best sign, I would say, is as long as your libido is good, you're probably, your estradiol levels are where they need to be. When estradiol gets too high and there's a clear loss in libido or penile sensitivity, anorgasmia, difficulty orgasming, that's when it suggests that it's a little bit high. Similar to so you had a question about DHT as well. DHT is not a bad thing. It's also derived from testosterone. It's broken down by another enzyme called 5-alpha reductase. And so the important thing, again, is the ratio between the two, the balance between the hormones. So it's the T to DHT ratio that we care about. And the good thing is studies show that enclomiphene maintains the T to DHT ratio. So even though DHT may be going up somewhat, it should be going up because you're raising testosterone. The ratio is maintained. Now, if you compare that to, let's say, a topical TRT gel, the ratio gets very skewed, where you have an increase in testosterone, but your DHT skyrockets, and it's much more likely that you're gonna have potentially associated DHT-related symptoms regarding your hair or your prostate, even though that's controversial in and of itself. But classically, that's what it's associated with. So we always say it's essentially much more hair safe, if you will, of a protocol than, let's say, a topical TRT gel. And so I don't think you need to stress about DHT. Again, if you're feeling fine, you're not all of a sudden losing hair, which we haven't heard about from any of our clients, it should be good to go. So good question, but just I would say monitor your testosterone, monitor how you're feeling, and talk to your doctor, obviously, and they'll make sure that you're adjusted and taking the appropriate dose. All right, I'm gonna let in someone else from the waiting room. Let me just type in just in case you can't hear me. Where's that coming from? The audio. Oh, I think it's coming from the headphones. I'm sorry. I think. I think I can hear you now.
I can now hear you. Great.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize it was still connected to my headphones, so I was like, I swear he can hear me, but I can't hear him.
Oh, believe me, transfer going between your phone and computer, and then forgetting what's connected.
My apologies.
Always the case.
Well, great to hear from you. What's on your mind?
Just actually fairly broad. Any advice on getting started? So just joined up with you guys there a couple weeks ago. Sent back bloods, got the results the other day. Kind of in the middle, lower end of the spectrum. So waiting on doctor results or doctor review, and then potentially getting going. So I'll make the assumption that will go forward. So I guess in that vein, any advice or any pointers on getting started, or for a fairly first attempt at this?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you got your initial blood work done. Obviously, that's a really important starting point to know where you're starting from. I think that's actually the total tragedy of our healthcare system is I don't know why more routine blood work is not done. Not even just for testosterone. It's crazy to me that blood sugar testing, blood glucose testing is not routine. And I spent a decade sort of working in the overall weight loss and diabetes space. And unless you're like above a certain age and have high blood pressure or some other risk factor, they don't routinely test blood sugar, which is crazy to me because half of Americans have elevated blood sugar and 89% of people don't know it. I think it's the same issue with testosterone. Like, did you know that you like what your testosterone was before you tested with us?
Testosterone, no, but actually, and I think to your point, I think it's rare. My background was in engineering and construction, so I actually, by virtue of being on a construction site all the time, we had fantastic, insurance just because,
Makes
unfortunately, shit happens. And it is, of course, it's insurance driven, right? So we did have blood work done every year that cut your rates down to like nothing insurance. But again, that's all. It's all motivated by lower premiums for the company, company-backed health insurance, right? So, I'd say large companies will eventually probably get there because it saves them money, right?
Yeah.
What's the but no, not testosterone.
Yeah, it's a great point. So some folks do, to your point, some self-insured employers essentially like bring in third-party vendors that do like routine biometric testing. I wish all companies did that, but I just think
it's it's all those things. It's those are the silent killers, right? Like there's nothing objectively wrong with me. There's I don't go to the doctor. It's the annual, biannual checkup, and it's like, okay, maybe the cholesterol's a little high, maybe the glucose is there. Unfortunately, knock on wood, everything is still in great regions there.
Right.
Which again is where and I guess there is still a lot of taboos out there when it comes to testosterone. Certainly the being partaking in sports myself, everyone thinks of roid rage and all the illicit components of that. So but again, very glad to have found you guys, and excited to work with you.
For sure. Yeah. And how did you hear about us, by the way?
It was I've actually been the last year or two trying to kind of take a holistic approach, especially with COVID, having a little time, being able to kind of take a hard look at just habits and patterns. So,
Mm-hmm.
Is sleep as restful as it should be? No. So let's start, let's take the time and actually explore that, and different components of it. Is the, sexual health good? Maybe it's not what it could be. I'm certainly not 19, but,
Right.
I'm not 50, I'm not 60, 70, 80 years old. Definitely seen, I guess, weaker performance, not necessarily duration, just I guess I forget, I don't know the right word. I guess either, I guess, extent of erection rather than
Mm-hmm.
duration. To frankly not getting, as hard even through sex,
Right.
frustrating partners, things like that. So, definitely step back and take a look at these things. So, started doing the research, started looking around, and then, certainly, I think this is a tablet or a pill rather than injections.
Right.
So that, definitely was a leg up on a lot of other stuff I was seeing. And then just a lot of positive reviews from, the peanut gallery, that is.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you found us online. And yeah, certainly it is a more not only convenient solution in terms of being a pill rather than injectable. I really never want to actually offer any injectables in the future. I just think it's just a very inconvenient form factor, particularly for things that you need to take on a daily basis. Even TRT, which is taken once a week or sometimes once every 2 weeks. Although ironically, the less you inject, the wonkier your levels are, because they spike and then they crash and you feel bad until your next injection. So the solution is to inject more often, but then it's a pain in the ass to do so. So either way you have an issue. And then also the idea of just injecting anything unless it's an acute urgent need, I was like, sure, inject me if I'm have an infection and I need an IV, but other than that, for routine maintenance, pills are superior, and there's now very novel delivery systems too, sublingual, absorption under the tongue, intranasal, etc., that can avoid actually most injections, in my opinion. Now,
just to interrupt you, just convenience, right? You're getting ready to
Yeah.
bed with, you go to bed with, to call it a night with your partner. It's like, oh, hold on, let me go, alcohol, prep me, get a syringe, don't mind me.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to explain
Don't
why
make
you
me
got
this.
syringes around the house. So, yeah, it's certainly not convenient. So, I'm glad you did what you signed up. You got your preliminary blood work. It sounds like your testosterone levels were sort of in the lower end of the range. So let's obviously get you on the protocol, and see your improvement in 30 days. Now you might start feeling it sooner, but the testosterone levels peak around day 28. So that's why we have people retest after 30 days. But I think there's also, being a protocol, not just a pill, other things that you can do as well. Have you checked out the ebook that I've written on testosterone maximization?
I did, and definitely a lot of things. Trying to work on. I'd say sleep habits is probably the toughest.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Maybe we can work on that a little bit here. Like, how's your sleep right now? How much sleep are you getting a night?
I've been doing a lot better recently. So I am working full time. Kind of my own prerogative, whether I go to an office or from home. That's actually been very reasonable. Historically, very much the New York mentality. If you're not putting in at least 60, 70 hours, you're on vacation.
Right.
That's been a lot better. I moved companies last year in the middle of the pandemic, and that's actually worked a lot better. That said, I also started doing a part-time MBA, so
you got a lot going on.
Free up my time. So, trying to do better. Definitely something I'm trying to do better on last year with the MBA. You can imagine a component of that is networking and socializing.
Sure.
So a lot more late nights.
So what time are you going to bed on average?
Usually midnight 1.
Okay, and then what time are you waking up?
So that was the better one. 2 years ago it was 7 o'clock at the latest, no matter what. Now I don't have meetings until 10, so I can say it's like I'm getting 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep routinely. So 6 to 8 is my and more. The better I'm getting at, the better I'm trying to work on getting more of 8. And that's been even in the last, we went on summer break about 2 months ago, even, just getting the sleep, seeing appetite is not drastically swinging as much,
Right.
Getting those late night cravings, all those things. So, definitely recognize a lot of things. And then, just other things that I'm certainly aware of that, just have to kind of commit to doing it all.
Sure. So I got a question for you. So 6 to 8 hours is actually like a decent amount of variance in terms of the range of sleep. What makes a difference that causes you to get 6 hours versus 8 hours of sleep?
Most of the time, it's just me mindless, right? Continuing to think about stuff, brain's still going late at night. And then that'll either keep working or it'll kind of get into the, habit of just watching TV until you kind of doze off. So,
Okay.
Actually, in the last month or so, I've kind of unplugged my TV, try to get back in the
Smart.
habit of. Well, it's the same way that binging is, right? It's not out of hunger. It's not out of interest in what's on TV.
Sure.
It's out of
People are
habit or
bored and more. Sometimes I think they just need to, decompress a little bit. So, I mean, I think what you're talking about as a principle in psychology we call stimulus control, right? Which is a fancy word for, look, if you can't control yourself, don't put yourself in a place or an environment that allows the stimulus to be there, because none of us have perfect self-control. I think if you're relying on willpower to enact behavior change other than getting started, it's a fool's errand, because nobody's perfect. We all have moments of weakness, especially late at night when we're tired, hungry, angry, lonely, anxious, bored, or tired. So you don't put temptation, in front of you. I'm really great about eating really healthy at home, but it's because I don't have cookies in the house, because I'm pretty sure if I had them, I would eat them.
Yep.
So I think unplugging is a good thing. But here's my suggestion to you. Have you, we talked about this in the ebook, but I don't know if you've actually implemented this. I talk about the notion of a bedtime alarm. Have you ever tried that before?
In theory, I've never been able to really get it going. Where you're talking about, setting yourself that 10 o'clock, I'm winding down,
Exactly.
10:30 teeth.
Yeah. So everyone uses waking alarms, right, to get out of bed, and obviously you don't want to be late for work. But my sort of contrarian thesis is people really need bedtime alarms, and ideally you should actually not have a wake up time alarm, because your body knows the optimal amount of time to sleep. So my argument is, in fact, if you're waking up with an alarm clock, you're by definition sleep deprived, because your body actually wants to sleep more and you're interrupting it artificially through an alarm. The goal obviously is to go to bed earlier and earlier, so that whatever time that you need to get up to do your social or your occupational tasks, that you're getting up early enough that you have a cushion of space and you don't need an alarm ever. So yeah, I would highly actually suggest formally, I know you know the principle of it, but actually implementing it, because it sounds like the two things that you raised that are the barriers to, getting closer to 8 hours versus 6 hours of sleep is the things that you mentioned, right? Which is like television watching, or sort of, it sounds like late night rumination, or late night working, that just needs to be cut off. And I feel you, because I've been in that place of you're working on something, you don't want to interrupt it, or maybe you're on a train of thought and you want to go with it, or you're in the middle of reading something and you don't want to stop. But it really sometimes takes an external nudge, particularly I would say for folks who are on the inattentive / ADHD spectrum. It's hard to shift attention. So that's by the way, the thing that's misunderstood about ADHD. It's not that people ADHD have trouble focusing. If they love it, they can focus all day on the video game or whatever it is that they love. It's trouble focusing on things that are very boring and non-stimulating, and it's a trouble shifting focus or attention from work to bedtime or things like that. So what's helpful for folks who are on that spectrum is alarms and reminders, and quite frankly, it's useful for everyone, regardless of whether you're ADHD or not. It's just especially useful for those folks. So I think we can kind of take a page from that playbook and say, hey, why don't we institute a bedtime alarm? One, to your point, that is the initiation of the routine, right? Because I really am a big fan of instituting a bedtime routine, even if it's 5 minutes, just to create that conditioning or that association between this behavior means that it's time to go to bed, and your brain will be like, all right, let me just start kicking in the sleepy gears, so to speak, kick in my melatonin release, and other sort of psychophysiological factors that will lull me to bed so that by the time my head hits the pillow, I'm hopefully asleep within 15 minutes. And then ideally a second alarm, which is the actual strict bedtime alarm. Now, obviously, if you're going to bed before then, you can just turn it off. But that's like all right, I've done my bedtime routine. I got to be in bed within a couple minutes. So it's the end alarm. So is that something that you'd be open to trying?
Absolutely.
What time would you ideally want to be asleep, like eyes closed, fall asleep?
I mean, if I could, 12 to 8, I think I'm just, knowing how, my girlfriend works and things like that, it's and certainly there's just some negotiation there and, trying to get her on board too. But, I think midnight is a reasonable.
I love midnight. So. I always say nothing good happens after midnight, so it's a pretty good cutoff. You're not going to turn into a pumpkin, as they say. So yeah, why don't you put that as a final sleep alarm? And then in terms of a sleep routine, do you have a sleep routine right now? A bedtime routine?
Just brush my teeth kind of stuff, wash my face, all of 5 minutes.
Is there something that you like to do before bed besides just the hygiene stuff that just helps you kind of maybe unwind your mind a little bit from work?
Not really, but because I know I'm looking at screens all day. I actually just went and tried to get a Kindle and other things. To get more into and get into less screen time. And I know the Kindle is still a screen, but at least the light is a little bit different.
Yeah, that's fine. I actually really
reading or something.
I actually talk about this in the dopamine fasting article. I think Kindle and paper books are a different category, and I actually don't think they apply to dopamine fasting. A, because you're not getting the blue light stimulation that keeps people up, but B, it's not the same as a phone or a laptop in that it doesn't require clicking or scrolling for the most part, other than obviously to turn the page. But you don't turn the page more than once a minute. It's too slow to actually be addictive. I can tell you as a psychologist, very rarely you'll ever hear about anyone who's like addicted to reading, right? But there's definitely people who are addicted to smartphones, internet gambling, pornography, social media, because they're just designed for engagement. So I think actually it's totally fine to read before bed. So I would actually kindly suggest that. It's totally fine to bring your Kindle. I would suggest, besides your, wash your face, brush your teeth, throw in 5 minutes or 5 pages, whatever criteria you want to use. Not too onerous, so it's like, oh, okay, I'm just tired, I'm not going to go read for half an hour. Just start out really, really small. This is like classic BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits. You use the smallest amount that gets you started. Even if it's literally 1 minute or 1 page, that doesn't make you skip it. You can always increase the time once you have the consistency of the habit. But I would just start a reading habit. And like I said, the point of it, obviously, besides the enjoyment of reading, is to just condition your brain to associate the reading with, all right, time to shift my, mindset and psychological space away from work, stress, analytical sort of thinking, to a little bit more of a relaxed, space. And obviously, it's time to go to bed. So, how long did it? Go ahead.
Can I ask? Because a lot of the stuff I have, is not exactly novels, and it's certainly kind of business or strategy oriented stuff. So
it's fine as long as it's not keeping you up.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if you enjoy a good business book, nothing wrong with that. So yeah, fiction or nonfiction, I don't think it matters too much, as long as it's not. Now, if it's like, you're reading some sort of horror, not Stephen King novel, and you're not sleeping, that's a different story. But I'm a practical man. Do what works. How long total would it take you to brush your teeth, wash your face, read, in approximately?
I mean, if we're talking about, and I was just kind of trying, I was looking at this, 10 minutes, go to the bathroom, whatever, wash your face, hang out for everything, whatever it is. maybe 20 minutes of reading is a reasonable, that way your alarm, the difference is about a half hour. So 11:30, ish is your first alarm, 12 o'clock, second alarm.
Perfect. I love it. So let's implement that for a week and see how it goes. Now, the key thing to this whole thing, and I always tell people as I forewarn them about alarms. Alarms are only as good as a stimulus is only as good as its response, right? So you cannot ignore the alarm and you cannot snooze it, right? Because you do that, it makes it worthless, and then you will condition yourself, ironically, in a negative way, to just ignore the damn things. So take alarms really seriously. Like, take it as like a phone call, like, it's an important call. You're not going to ignore it. When you implement it, be like, all right, 11:30, no matter what I'm doing, unless literally the house is on fire or it's something urgent, I'm going to kickstart my routine, do my 10 minutes of hygiene, bed prep, and then read for 20 minutes. And then no matter how engaging the business book that I'm reading is, that second alarm is at midnight. Now, like I said, if you choose to go to bed at 11:57, just obviously turn off the alarm in advance. But if it goes off and it's midnight, tuck it away. Be like, all right, I'm going to save this for another night, like 1001 Nights, and I will go off to bed. And then just see how that treats you. Because I think the biggest thing that people underappreciate is not only is the quantity of sleep important, but actually the consistency of sleep is really important. And if you just practice actually going to bed at the same exact time and waking up ideally at around the same time, it really gets your body into a good biorhythm that really helps your energy levels, it helps your focus, a lot of other things, because it just goes through that consistency and it knows what to expect. So you'll find that you're able to, for instance, fall asleep faster when you go to bed at the same time, versus if you're going to bed somewhere between 11, 12, 1, maybe 2 on a really late night, and there's let's say a 2-hour, maybe 3-hour variance in terms of your earliest to latest bedtime, you just don't get as good a sleep. Versus if you cut the variance down to within, let's say, 30 minutes, then your body's like, oh, okay, pretty much around midnight, maybe even 11:30, I'm going to bed. You'll just find that like I said, your sleep latency, the time to fall asleep, and your sleep quality will improve quite a bit.
Cool.
Awesome. So let's just hone in on that. I don't like to overload people with too much change at once. Focus on one thing at a time. So I would say if you can really try to optimize your sleep to consistently, I would say almost never get below 7 hours. You're going to notice a huge difference when you cut out those nights when you're getting 6 hours, because it's just, nobody feels great, I think, honestly, when they're getting 6 hours of sleep. So the least, if you can get minimum of 7 hours, and then obviously closer to 8 if that's what your body needs, depending on how much you're working and how much physical activity that you're getting. Not only will your testosterone increase, you'll get a 10 to 15% boost just from getting an extra hour of sleep a night. Plus, obviously, in conjunction with the protocol, which should give you, a 50 to 150% boost, you'll hopefully notice that, and it'll improve your energy and your focus as well. Hey, Tony, thanks for joining us on Instagram.
Cool. No, that definitely good start. So, I guess other than that, logistics as far as expecting, I think there was a bunch of paperwork, just had the medical review, and then I guess that's probably coming back tomorrow or so, and then about another week from then, start seeing something in the mail.
Yeah. So as soon as the doctor obviously reviews your medical history intake, and then writes the prescription, it'll I think we've actually instituted 2-day shipping. So it's 2 days from the time of prescription, the pharmacy receives the prescription, so you should get that pretty soon. So I actually anticipate sometime next week you should get it, and then
Cool.
take it every day in the morning, and let us know how it goes.
And be on the lookout for, as I said.
Yep. Awesome. Really, really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you so much.
Take care, and join us on the community on Discord if you want to continue the conversation.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Okay, let's put in David.
time?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. I'm glad we were able to connect this time around. How are you doing?
I apologize for the first go around earlier today.
It's all good. Well, better late than never. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good, sir. Yourself?
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for calling in. How what's on your mind? How can I help you?
I'm only 2 weeks into the program, and I'm just trying to understand what I should expect and if I'm eating right, or is there any specific things you recommend?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. Well, first of all, glad that you signed up, and I'm glad you've been on it for 2 weeks. What was your original motivation, or what are you looking to get out of it?
It's going to sound kind of crazy, but I was reading an article. I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but it was that somebody had boosted their T levels through your program.
Was it GQ?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, that was it. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't remember. But it was it piqued my interest because I'm 48 this year, and I've noticed a distinct decline in my activity levels in life in general. And I had been talking to my wife, and it just seemed really odd because it wasn't a gradual thing. It was almost kind of like I hit a brick wall. Kind of weird. It was really strange. And I'm a very active person in general, always have been. So I read that article, and I thought, well, maybe I've never had my T levels checked. Right. Maybe I should take a look at it. So I went through the process and everything, and mine come back in the low 200s.
Your total testosterone.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty low.
Yeah. And it just kind of, I don't know, it kind of hit me kind of hard. It's like, okay, maybe I need to take a look at this and do something. So I started to take it seriously. Yep. And it's only been a couple of weeks. Right. So, but in the 2 weeks that I've been taking it, my wife actually looked at me the other day, and she's like, I don't know where you're getting it, but and I'm talking around the house, working in the garage, working in the yard. So she's like, I don't know where it come from, but you're twice the energy level that you were. Wow. So I don't know if it's vitamins. I don't know if it's, the pills. I have no idea.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like it's doing something. Not only if you can feel it, but if someone else can notice it externally, that's always a good sign. So when you said you're kind of hitting the brick wall earlier, that meant sort of like in terms of your energy levels? So that was like the main shift or focus that you noticed all of a sudden?
There was a lot of days I just didn't want to get out of the chair. I just didn't want to do anything.
Right.
And I used to, just to give you an idea, I'm an oil and gas employee.
Yeah.
And the average workday for me is 12 to 15 hours.
That's a lot of work.
Always has been. It's been my entire career. But I used to be in the garage. I used to work on restoring cars.
Nice.
I'd be out riding motorcycles. I would be building stuff, fixing shit. I mean, you just always doing something.
Right.
It just seems like for the last year or two, I'd rather just watch TV.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad you're noticing an effect. And you should actually continue to notice a even greater effect. The testosterone levels typically peak around 4 weeks. So you're about 2 weeks in. That's why we test after 4 weeks. Is just you're already actually experiencing some of the benefits and the testosterone increase. You should usually feel it about within a week or two, but you'll maximally feel it, so to speak, right around 4 weeks. So you should be getting that second blood test that you can do at home, and we'll see how much it improves from a total testosterone of 200 to whatever it's going to be. I actually anticipate you'll probably get a pretty good effect. We actually find generally folks who start out lower get a bigger boost, so to speak. And the thing that we're looking closer at is free testosterone. I don't know if you remember your number from that. We care about that a little more than the total testosterone, but you should see hopefully a pretty healthy increase from that.
I'm trying to remember. There was the way the chart was broke down. Is that the one that was between 15 and 35, or no?
No. So we measure total testosterone, LH, and SHBG. Those are the three main markers, and we have to calculate. Usually, in your message, that we calculate the free testosterone from those markers. So that's usually kind of in the 50 to 150 range. If you share your lab results later on Discord, I can take a look at it for you. But I know it's low if your total testosterone is 200.
So yeah, it was like I think my total T was like 245 or something. It was just it just seemed oddly low.
Do you know what dosage you're on? Are you on 6.25 or 12.5 milligrams?
12.5.
Okay, yeah. So usually if you're starting out a little lower like you are, you're going to be put on, that's kind of like the medium dose, so to speak, which has found good results in the clinical trials. So yeah, I think you'll hopefully see some pretty good results when we come back in 2 weeks. Let me know how it goes. And then how are you doing on the health behavior side of things in terms of diet, exercise, sleep, stress?
I have never been one to sleep a lot, period. I just haven't.
Yeah.
And I did have enough. I did have a little bit of motivation to try and work out. So I did make it. I've been to the gym 3 times in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, excellent.
And but my daily lifestyle has always been so active,
right,
that I've never really been a gym goer kind of person.
Sure.
But the thing that really, one of the other things that surprised me was I haven't changed my diet. I don't like sugar. I don't like to eat a lot of junk food.
Mm-hmm.
But my God, the belly weight just seemed to, it just keeps growing. You know, it's like, I don't know what's going on. So that was one of the other things. And I didn't know if I should follow some kind of a diet plan or something. I mean,
I think that would be a good idea, and that's where you're going to really get most of the benefit. I think contrary to popular notion, even though exercise is important for a lot of reasons, really weight loss, especially belly fat loss, is really going to be 80% plus diet and the nutritional choices that you make. So if you notice that's been creeping up as you get older, which is really common for guys put on about 1 pound or 2 of muscle of fat, belly fat especially, a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but obviously you do the math, over 10 to 20 years, you've all of a sudden put on 10 to 20 pounds, if not 20 to 40 pounds, and that's how obesity sort of creeps up on you, and you don't notice it because it's so gradual over time. So, what does your diet look like? Are you willing to make any dietary changes?
Oh, of course, I certainly will. The average day for me is, for probably about the last 2 or 3 months, I get up in the morning. Usually, if I'm at, now there's 2 different lifestyles that I live. If I'm at work, now when I go to work, I'm a field engineer, so I'm out in the field for 2 weeks, staying on a job site. So when I get up at 3, I usually drink a bottle of water with electrolytes in it.
Yep.
And then I take a cup of coffee. I kind of like butter coffee. I don't put any MCT oils in it, but I like a little bit of butter and heavy cream.
Yeah, the bulletproof coffee.
Yeah, so I take that, and then I go and I start my day, and then I usually end up eating something around 11.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually either eggs and tomatoes or maybe some sort of a salad or something.
So you're up at 3 and you're not eating till 11, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I try to have some sort of a balanced dinner between 5 and 6.
Okay.
Usually beef and some vegetables, or chicken, vegetables, something like that.
And what's your height and weight currently?
I'm 6 foot tall, and when I weighed myself the other day, I was 225.
Okay, so yeah, you got a little bit of weight to lose. How much weight have you put on lately? Like, has it been last couple of years? Has it been gradual, like I was talking about?
Oh, easy 20 pounds.
Okay. And how long did it take you to put on those 20 pounds?
I'd say 3 to 4 years.
Okay, that makes sense. Was there a change that happened in the last 3 to 4 years? Are you eating any differently?
Not really, no.
Okay.
And that's kind of what brought me to your program, because it seemed.
I assume you're eating a pretty big dinner.
Not really. I usually have, if I cook hamburgers, I'll cook 2 burgers, but I don't like bread, so I eat them with a fork. If I cook a steak, I usually cut the steak. Sometimes I eat the whole steak. Sometimes I'll cut it in half and then have some, 3 or 4 cups of vegetables with it.
Yeah.
So they're not huge meals.
I mean, what you're describing sounds pretty healthy to me, but I assume, like everyone else, you're not perfect. So where do you think a lot of the excess or the bad stuff's coming from in your diet?
I kind of thought it was because I slowed down and just didn't feel like moving. But it's, I don't know. Probably, I don't know. I mean, I like to drink a lot of beer, but I drink light beer, so maybe that is. That could be extra calories.
How many beers a day?
I had 3 today.
Mm-hmm.
There's, yeah, I mean, if I'm on days off, if I'm at home and I'm
Sure.
not doing anything on a Saturday or something, I can drink, easily a 6-pack.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, well, it's probably not helping for two
No.
reasons. Even though light beer, yeah, it's better in terms of you're not putting on as many calories. But I don't know. What does light beer have? Like 100 calories per beer,
Something like that. Yeah.
300
90, 100, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So like, I think even in Michelob Light, it's like 95. So obviously, if you do the math, 3 to 6 beers, it's 300, 600 extra calories, which if you just do that on a daily basis, that's exactly the amount that's going to put on extra belly fat. Second,
Yeah.
Beer in particular, any beer that has hops is actually estrogenic, right? And the extra sort of estrogen, plant-based estrogens, or what are called phytoestrogens, kind of can be hormone disrupting, and are not optimal for your testosterone levels. So I'm not saying don't enjoy a beer. Everyone likes a cold one every now and then, but you may want to moderate, your consumption. Where if you're having a lot, the old standard is actually for men to not have more than sort of 2 drinks a day, for women to have 1 drink a day, depending on their body weight. I think even recently, it's sort of guidelines have even suggested like probably more than 1 a day is not optimal for health. Now, you got to make your peace and decide what's right for you. But I think if you're trying to optimize your hormone levels and lose excess belly fat, definitely I would say reducing the drinking is going to potentially help. So you may want to start thinking about that as something you can moderate a little bit. And then the second aspect is, it sounds like you're kind of doing a little bit of almost like an intermittent fasting where you're doing the bulletproof coffee in the morning. And I assume you're working between 3 and 11, right? Because you're out in the fields, or
I am. I'm on my feet and I'm on the go.
Yeah.
It's not physical labor. It's like I said, being a field engineer, it's more data collection, stuff like that. I've got my boots on and I'm on the ground. I'm out walking. I'm doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So here's my point of view. Whatever you're doing is not working for you currently, in the sense that, like you said, you put on about 20 pounds in the last 3 to 4 years. So that's why I kind of asked you if you're open to change, because I think when you kind of come to that realization, you're like, whatever I'm doing is not working. Obviously, I'm not getting the results that I want. I gotta switch things up a little bit. I think that's really the key first step, if you will, right? So I think for some people, intermittent fasting can work. Obviously, we've had Dave on our podcast who created Bulletproof Coffee, but he even says, in his opinion, the most important benefit of intermittent fasting is not weight loss. It's actually mitochondria and energy, and it's a whole separate thing. So, and I actually am less of a fan of it. I think for a lot of people who are particularly active like yourself, you kind of want to eat consistently, and you want to get protein. So I would actually suggest you don't necessarily need to go nuts and have a huge breakfast, but you may want to actually experiment with having breakfast, like when you get up in the morning, have some protein, and try to eat a little bit more consistently throughout the day. I generally am a big fan of getting at least 20 to 30 grams of protein every time that you eat. So when you're waking up, breakfast literally comes from the word break fast, right? You're breaking a fast. Your body's in a catabolic state from sleeping overnight, in which the muscles are very slowly, being broken down because they're not getting nutrients, at least in the latter half of the night. So you want to break that and immediately get some protein in the morning. So I actually am a fan of that. Eggs or whatever your kind of protein of choice is. Yogurt's a really great choice. Figure something out where you can do that. Ideally, sometime between 3 and 11, that's still 8 hours. It would be great if you can have some sort of portable food. You obviously don't maybe have the time or space to cook, but if you have some portable energy, portable protein in particular that you can have maybe early morning, and then you can have your normal 11 o'clock lunch. What you may find is it kind of shifts your body so that you're getting protein, you're in a more anabolic versus catabolic state, and you're less likely to overeat in the afternoon because you've gotten protein earlier in the day. I think a lot of the mistake that guys make is they don't eat very much in the morning, maybe have a very light lunch, and then in the evening and at nighttime, they're getting the overwhelming majority of their calories then, and that's when you really overeat and overdo it. So I'm not actually a fan of OMAD, or what's called 1 meal a day that a lot of guys do. I generally think, a more broken down style where you have 3 solid meals a day, even some, the bodybuilding style where they're eating 5, 6 small meals a day, but they're obviously good quality, 20 to 30 grams of protein each. It just allows you to eat more consistently, and you're avoiding sort of getting into this hunger or starvation mode and then overeating to sort of compensate for it. So that's what I would suggest is try it. Just try to eat a little more regularly, protein more regularly. Like I said, at least maybe even 2 times, 3 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock, and then before eat your normal 11, 6 o'clock sort of meals, and see if that changes things for you. We do have an ebook. It's part of, I think it's if you go to MaximusTribe.com/book, that breaks down a lot more recommendations of what to eat exactly. But I think I would work on a little bit, just more consistent eating and more consistent protein, and see how that serves you.
Okay. I will definitely try that.
Awesome. So yeah, I think try that out as a first step. See how it goes. And then do you have a weight scale? Do you weigh yourself on a regular basis?
Every morning in my birthday suit when I get up.
Excellent. So keep track of that and see if it makes a difference. And then we can tweak some things around if it's not.
The highest I've been in the last couple of months was like 236 or 237.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I need to fix this.
Yeah, for sure. I think you getting down to the 200 range for your height, 6 foot 200, I think is, especially if you have a decent amount of muscle mass, is a much more reasonable height weight ratio. So I think you got a good 20, 30 pounds to go, but I think you can do that. I think it's pretty safe to lose about 1 to 2 pounds a week in my sort of clinical experience and observation. You don't want to overdo it. I always tell people if you cut too many calories at once, ironically your testosterone will drop. So don't get super aggressive about too much too soon. You don't want to be on a starvation diet. It's not good for your hormones. Slow and steady wins the race. Like I said, if you drop a pound a week, you can do that over 20 to 30 weeks and get a lot of good results without killing yourself. And you're an active guy. You don't want to cut too many calories at once because it's gonna kill your energy levels too if you're feeling hungry. You shouldn't be feeling hungry or starving all the time. It's just, I think, getting out those excess calories, maybe cutting down on the beer a little bit, and yeah, maybe getting a little bit more protein and getting it earlier in the day, I think is gonna shift the needle for you.
My work schedule, I usually, on a good day, if I didn't have any problems to deal with, I can lay down at 9 o'clock and go to sleep.
Yeah.
And then back up at 3 and forward. But it's only for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sometimes 3, but it's a 2-week schedule, and then I'm off for 2 weeks.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's a lot of folks do that, both in the oil industry and healthcare industry. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks. Yeah, so I feel you there. All right. Well, I think you're doing the good things. Keep it up. Obviously, get your lab test done in another 2 weeks when they show out the next kit.
I got the lab. My wife just called me and said a box, arrived.
Okay. Good.
And it must have sent it early.
Yeah, sometimes they'll send it a little bit early. So just wait until at least 30 days you've been on when you finish your bottle, and then take it in first thing in the morning, send it off, and we'll take a look at the results.
Okay.
Awesome, sir. Thank you so much. And then follow up. Feel free to follow up on a future call or obviously on the Discord community. Happy to coach you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Have a great day.
You too, sir.
All right. So we got a couple lingering questions from Instagram. I'm going to just roll through these really quick. If someone asks, my lab tests are done, now what? Your doctor will review it and then hopefully make a clinical decision about prescribing it. In the meantime, like I said, check out the ebook, MaximusTribe.com/book, so you can work on the health behavior change. Follow-up question, how long will my testosterone increase after I start taking the medicines? It'll increase as long as you're on them. So it works as long as you're taking them. So it's designed for safe daily use indefinitely. If you stop taking them, your levels will just go back down to where they were when you started, which is true of anything like vitamin D. Someone asked a question that we answered earlier. Do you see a bump in DHT with enclomiphene? Yes, you see an equal bump with testosterone and DHT, but the ratios stay the same. And how does that compare to exogenous T? At least compared to topical TRT, which is what the comparable study was comparing enclomiphene to, it maintained the ratios much better. So that's why we're saying it's essentially safer on your hair than that. One more, how does increasing hematocrit compare to exogenous T? There's no significant increase in hematocrit with enclomiphene, which is great news because then you don't have to donate blood or worry about high hematocrit. It is theoretically possible on very high dosages, but we start people on low dosages. We titrate up. It's not really commonly seen, so it's not as really much of a concern. So that's why it's also a lot safer than TRT. You don't have to worry about it.
Last question via YouTube. Since you talked about DHT, thoughts on finasteride and testosterone?
Yeah, we've talked about this in previous episodes. I'm not a fan of either oral or topical finasteride, which actually has the same effect. Topical finasteride absorbs systemically, so don't believe the hype that it's safer. It shuts down your DHT, which may improve your hair loss, but it is also the virility hormone, as Dr. Rand McClain says, and so it's responsible for your drive, aggression, and libido. It's kind of like the, I don't know, things that gives guys their edge. So when you shut it down, you just kind of feel like weak sauce, as I like to call it, instead of hot sauce. So I don't think it's a great or safe, super long-term approach. And obviously in a small percentage of men, they do have what's called post-finasteride syndrome. Now, there's obviously a debate about whether that's real or not, but I've talked to individual patients and it seems pretty real to me, and I can generally tell when things are psychogenic, given my background. So I think it just disproportionately affects a small percentage of people, and it really messes with their libido, and it's, for some folks, it seems to be permanent. So it can be a little risky. There's a lot of folks now, that being said, who take it and they're completely fine. They don't have any side effects or symptoms. I've talked to those people too, but I think it's like playing Russian roulette. So we're not going to prescribe or provide it. Our advisors are not fans of it, and we will have a much better solution coming at the end of this quarter. So, all right, we are way over time today, but thank you everyone for a lot of great questions. Thank you for everyone who chimed in on Instagram Live. Our Zoom. Thank you for everyone, Dan and Thomas, listening on Twitter Spaces, and the great folks who are listening on YouTube as well. You can catch us every Thursday at 6 o'clock and continue the conversation at MaximusTribe.com/Discord in our online community. Thank you, everyone. Have a very happy rest of your Thursday, and I'll catch you next week.